Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video is one of my forays into the true crime realm. Now, if I do true crime or if I do history, mystery kind of videos, if I do readings on those, I usually do them on issues that happened so long ago that no one living was directly involved in it, because I'm very sensitive to hurting other people, by accident, right? And so for that reason, I do very few true crime current day videos, I do a couple, I do some, I did one on, I think the first one I ever did was on Cavalcante, the escaped convict, that got loose in Pennsylvania and was running around Longwood Gardens. The reason that caught my attention was because it was from where I grew up, right? So I had a vested interest in that, and then I just followed it. The second true crime that's current that I did a reading on, and I will do today's reading on, was the case with the 4 young adults in Idaho, the Idaho 4 case. The reason I got interested and involved in that was because I think when I got sick with COVID and I was really flat out for at least 2 weeks, and then 2 days after I last tested negative from COVID, 2 days after I had total hip replacement surgery. So I had been out in bed for a long time, and even when I was finally able to get up and move around a little bit with some independence, I still spent a lot of day in bed. So I had a lot of downtime, and when I had my downtime, I could only watch so many old movies on, TCM, I've seen them all anyway 1,000 times, So I started just, catching up with YouTube, and I got sucked into the story of what happened to these young people. So I'm very late to the game. I only recently heard about that. I mean, I remember when it happened. I remember seeing it, on the news and being like, whoa, that's just horrific, But I never sought out information on it above and beyond what we just saw on the news. And then, of course, when law enforcement, decided that they found their fella, that interested me, But I really didn't get taken down that rabbit hole until I had COVID and then my surgery, because I had so much time to catch up. So there are a lot of crazy ideas out there. And I think some of them are probably very hurtful to some of the victims' families, and even to, the people who remained in the house after, after what happened. There were 2 roommates that were not killed, thank God, right? There were 2 that escaped harm. But there's been so much. Even the parents are getting dissed, and it's just, it's just disturbing. So I certainly don't want to add any pain or suffering in addition to what they're already all going through. But when and there's no but, that's a fact. I don't want anything I do or say to be harmful. And if I think after the video is over and the reading is done, if anything has been shown that would be highly distressful, I won't make it public. Also bear in mind that there may be something that I see and that maybe you'll see that might be extremely suggestive of something unpleasant, really unpleasant. I won't mention it. I won't mention it. So if you watch the video and you say, how could you have missed that? Oh my God. It's just like, well, I didn't miss it. I chose not to say it just because I don't know who's watching. Sometimes there may be very close family members or friends who might catch this video, and I would never, ever want to hurt them. Now, what's the question? Why would I even do one then? Well, I think as a general public person, I'm not a person like a family member, so I have no right, I don't think, I don't feel that I have the right to try to tune into what any of those girls or the young man were thinking, or, it's none of my, it's an intrusion. So I'm not looking to determine what any of them were up to, right? All I know is that they were all victims and somebody did this to them. And so I'm not, looking to question them or, put them under, the microscope. I am just looking at it from the perspective of why the heck did this go down? What happened? How could a human being be so deranged and short circuit himself to get to the point where this kind of action could possibly make sense? I don't get it. I guess, we'll never, there's no reason why. There is no reason why somebody would do this. This is insanity. That's the reason, insanity, or, having something wrong or being so defective, right, that you would do this kind of thing to other human beings. I mean, gee whiz, right? So there is no reason. So we're all scratching our head and going, why? Well, there isn't really there's no satisfying reason that we'll ever see. However, it is probably going to be a part of the trial, right? I think it's natural for the prosecutor to come up with a why, because, they have to establish that the reason why is in keeping with whatever they can determine is defective with their perpetrator. So, okay. So my question is, help us to make sense of the motive or the why. There is no real reason, but help us get as close as we possibly can to understanding what was going down in this guy's head. And then any other insights that could be shared with us. It's what we need to know. We don't need to know everything. I don't need to know everything. I would like to understand, like I just described, I would like to understand that much. And perhaps a glimpse in, to see according to the way things are, is it likely we'll see justice, right? So I think the cards will tell us some of the answers we're looking for, even though we don't know we're looking for those particular answers. So I don't want to put too many questions into this, but certainly an explanation for why, a reason why this occurred, and perhaps even the reason that, maybe even give us the reason that the prosecution might use. The reason we get in the cards might not be the reason the prosecution uses, but I'm trying to get to the reason why, spiritually that it happened. It may not be the best reason to put forth if you're in trial. They may have to come up with a better reason than whatever the cards might suggest. But anyway, I'm talking too much. Let me flip the camera. I'll go into my meditative place. I'm going to do a 9-card spread and then having the 4 additional quints for a total of 13 cards. I will be using the new shiny blingy Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I recently purchased, and it's not because I'm so enamored by it that I want to use it, but because I am on a mission to learn about plastic decks, and I want to use the only plastic deck that I have, because this is the only plastic deck I could get my hands on for not too much money. And I want to use it with some frequency so that I can see how it wears. If the paint chips off or whatever, then I know to skip it, right? Okay, so that's the deck I'm going to be using. I'll be right back. Okay, I've gone into my meditative place, and I've established, that asking questions that we need to, that on a need-to-know basis. We don't need to know every single thing, every single detail about this case, but we would like some insights, particularly insights for a motive, because as human beings, I think we try to make things make sense, and this doesn't make sense. Okay. So we have in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it's called the High Priestess. It could be a card of intuition, of trusting your instincts. The Star card. Ooh. The Ten of Coins. So far of the 3 cards, right? We have the Star card, which is, a beautiful card. It's, you wish upon a star, dreams come true, that kind of thing. How contrary to what we would expect to see in a reading about a massacre of young people. We have the Ten of Coins, which suggests a very happy domestic situation, bliss. Right? The pinnacle of achievement of a happy and successful life. A life well lived. Working on making dreams come true. The High Priestess. So I don't think these cards obviously can be describing the perp, because these are too positive, in my view, to represent somebody with an evil heart or a wicked heart. Now, least of all, the reason is that we have it beginning with a woman. Now, she's not a queen, she's the High Priestess. So this might be representing one of the women or all of the youngsters as a whole. It could be referencing listening to your gut and listening to your instincts and your intuition. So I have to lay more cards to see in what context this is, and it could be representing all those concepts at the same time. But this could be reflective of what was going on in at least one of the young people's minds. I know one of them, I think, graduated, was already going for, job. She already had a job, right? The whole world was ahead of her, the dreams are coming true and, setting on a path for a good life. So, this looks to me like the aspirations of at least one of the young people. Everything to live for. Everything. Full of ambition. And then we have a King of Wands. The Six of the Six of Pentacles. If I accidentally say coins, please forgive me. So it could represent, generosity. It could represent some type of generosity. But it could also represent miserliness, depending on the context of the question. And then we have an end cap with another court card, the Queen of Swords. So there looks like there's a pair not well matched. One is a sword and one is a baton. On the surface, they're maybe like-minded because they're, assertive individuals, people who are ambitious, right? But they go about things differently. And certainly this pair is at odds with one another. Now, I don't think of this perpetrator, whoever it is, as a mature adult. As a matter of fact, if I were to describe him or choose a card to describe him, it would probably be a page or one of the less behaved knights, but I wouldn't choose a king to represent him. But nevertheless, we have a pair of bookends not seeing eye to eye. So there may have been a conflict or a difference of opinion regarding maybe a transaction or I don't know what. Maybe, I don't know, transaction, what kind of transaction that would be. But some kind of an exchange between them whereby perhaps one of them was in a position to be generous to the other, or something like that. I don't know. But this pair don't see eye to eye, perhaps regarding money. Maybe it's about money. They have a conflict of opinion. My goodness, would you kill somebody over a conflict about money? My goodness. Okay, let's see what's next. Then we have a balancing act again. Could be in reference to a transaction or a business thing. Underhandedness. Okay, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, perhaps they're not talking about underhandedness when they describe this card, but a manifestation of power. And then a sense of having to defend oneself. So a battle, So I explained the cards individually, what they could mean in the context of the question, but I want to read the whole reading as a whole. Before I do that, however, I do want to lay down the quint cards. You know how I roll with that. Any card that has a numeric value, I add them up. And if it's 22 or less, I pick a card that corresponds to it. With the 20, if I get 22, I'll minus 22 and then make it 0. So whether you consider the full 0 or 22, it would be accounted for. If I add the cards up and they total greater than 22, I just subtract 22 until I get a card number between 1 and 21. So let me go off camera and do that. However, I will mention what they might be. 2 and 1 is 3, 3 and 7 is 10. The quint here would be the Wheel of Fortune. Here we have 2 court cards, so I don't put numeric value to those. Some people do, and that's not incorrect. I just don't. I just give value to the numbers, the cards that have numbers. 6 would be Lover, so that would be the Lover card or the Lovers. At the top row is 2 and 17, which would be 19. 19 and 10 would be 29, minus 22, which would give us 7, which is the Chariot. Then I'll add the same process with the end cap quints, and then I'll get the final quint card. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I just want to give a rundown of what the quint cards were. In the top row, as I mentioned, it was the Chariot, which I think is very interesting because a vehicle played a role in this story twice, maybe 3 times. One of the young ladies who who this row might be referencing, had, I believe, graduated and came back. One of the reasons coming back was because she wanted to show her friend her new car. So, this could be doing service by indicating which of the young ladies that this particular row might be representing. It might also be doing double duty because one of the reasons they caught who they think is the perpetrator was through a vehicle, right? So we have that. And then there was also another vehicle that played a role because there was a food delivery, a DoorDash delivery at some point, right around when the incident occurred. And, that individual, who knows, may play a role later on when we get more information. There's surely much, much, much more that we don't know than what we do know. So it seems as though a vehicle, definitely played a role. And as I mentioned, there are at least 3 vehicles that play a role in this story. And who knows what further information might be collected regarding that. The second row, the quint card, was the Lover's card. And, now it's interesting because this row makes me think of the young couple that were together, Ethan and Xana. And I wonder if this is referencing them having a disagreement. They were not seeing eye to eye regarding something that happened, that maybe, regarding money. So there seems to have, I'm wondering, now that we have the quint card here, if it's not referencing a conflict with the couple. But again, whether it's describing the first young lady, that came back with a car and she had her whole future and she was just so excited and happy, or whether it's this row is referencing the lover couple, I still don't see a motive. I don't see a motive, And then the last, row, we have the Wheel of Fortune as the quint, suggesting, perhaps a destiny or, something being played out. And then here we have, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a conflict. Just some type of duality, it could be a conflict. You notice in the background, the waters are rough. So there's a decision to be made. There's an inner turmoil, perhaps. You see the background kind of makes you dizzy. I don't know if this could be the row that is describing the perp, right? I don't know. But there seems to be, either a decision or maybe justification for something. Then we have in the Rider-Waite-Smith oeuvre, that the Magician card is not, does not signify sleight of hand or trickster. It more signifies manifestation of power. So I guess it was a power play. I'm seeing this as the perp because this is the person who feels, he's not fighting with swords. And it's not a to your death kind of portrayal in this image, but there's a sense of fighting or defending oneself and manifesting power, So, I get this card. I can't even touch it. It's giving me the chills because it's like a sense of almost divine power that I believe that this represents the perp that he achieved in that moment. Yeah, wow. Wow, yeah. And then the final outcome for the entire read is also the Magician, which I pulled from another Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Obviously, we don't have two magicians in a deck. So I am guessing that the whole thing was about power. The whole thing was about power. Maybe the top row not just represents the one young lady, but maybe both of the young ladies, since they were together when they died. So this could be representing both of those young ladies, because this seems to be representing the other couple of people, right? So I think that's what these two rows represent. I was focusing on perhaps one young lady, but, we do see the duality in the columns, right, with the High Priestess. So it could be representing the two young ladies. And what I said about one of them could pertain to both of them. They have the whole world and life and everything wonderful ahead of them. They have ambition, all that. So perhaps, I'm not seeing a motive per se other than power, just power. And look at that, it's like supreme power. I can't, it's just giving me the chills to touch it because I don't want it to take me to the place where he was exalted, and that's how it feels. That's how it really feels. So, if we make sense of these cards, perhaps there was a jealousy, that these young people seem to have so much. Maybe he was just jealous of the couple being a couple, and maybe he was, jealous of the young ladies because they were way out of his league. And but above and beyond that, I don't see a good explanation. I don't know what the prosecution will say was the motive. But I think the genuine motive is just power, dominion, like domination. I get, it appears twice. It appears in his row and it appears as the final. So I think it was just a thing about power and exerting power over these young people, over these people. And, man, I mean, let me flip the camera. It would be nice to see, a spelling out of, oh, he did this because there was unrequited love, or he did this because there was an argument, or a conflict. And, there is conflict, there are, there is a two, right? That is a little bit of a conflict. So maybe there was a conflict, and then, wanting power, wanting to dominate over the conflict. And then again, of course, that card of struggling or fighting or defending himself, or it could be them defending themselves also. But I'm not seeing like a satisfactory reason other than power. He wanted power. Power. Oh. Wow. Wow. And I think we also in this reading got a little glimpse into what the others were, what their last feelings were, I get a sense from the young ladies, they were very hopeful and happy and eager, right? They had no reason to think life wasn't going to be great. And then the other couple, I don't know, maybe they had a little bit of a conflict that night, which put them at odds, which is terribly sad. But ultimately they were lovers, right? That was the ultimate card that popped up. So, how, you ever see that cartoon describing a couple who are mad and they're sitting on a park bench and they're like, and they have their backs to one another, but it's raining and the husband has the umbrella out over his wife's head, right? Well, that's how it is when you love somebody. You could be really angry at them, but you'll still you still make them coffee and send it to them in the bedroom, that kind of thing. So, they unfortunately might have been at odds with one another, but when it came down to it, they were a couple and they were committed, perhaps, and, fighting for each other. That's a, distinct possibility. So that's the glimpse I'm getting into the four people. I'm not getting any glimpse of anyone else who may have been in the house. And I'm getting no other glimpse of, what his reason was. But, really there is no good reason. There really isn't. And the closest maybe we can get to understanding is just the wickedness of feeling as though he has to do something so extreme to feel anything. And that's a dark place to be. That's a real dark place to be. Anyway. I hope this has been insightful, and until next time, friends, peace and stay well.